So this video is all about how to get up on the FOIL or GetFOIL Cyberdeck design. The original Cyberdeck design, this angular design, makes it so that it is a little more difficult or just different to get up on. And I'm going to share with you my tips to help you have a better experience with getting up on this very unique shape. This shape, which is not very functional on the water. So it's not only angular in its perimeter, it's also angular on the bottom. It is flat from here back, and it is also flat from here forward. So whenever water is hitting the front of the board on this angular nose, it's going to push it higher up. It's going to want to make it go higher up like this. Getting up on any eFoil is going to require a lot of front foot pressure. It helps keep the nose down to keep the board from elevating earlier than you want it to. And this is a practice that is common across all eFoil decks. But because of the angular bottom of the hull, you're going to have to put even more forward pressure on the nose to keep it down until the entire board is planing and only the back section, the back 2/3 of the board is fully on the surface of the water and planing on the surface of the water, and you no longer have this angled front pushing up into the air. And the same position that you need to stand on this board so that you have more control over that fulcrum, that angle right here is pretty much exactly the same position that you need in order to get the board on plane. So getting up on any eFoil, another great tip is to keep the nose only a few inches above the water, just as you see it now on the floor. It's only just a few inches above the water. You want to make sure that the nose is only a few inches above the water the entire time. You don't want it to be submerging where water is going over the front, because if water goes over the front and covers the perimeter of the battery bay, and these latches are a good visual, if water covers that, it's going to cut off the Bluetooth signal. It is inhibited by carbon fiber and water. So if you're kneeling on the board, you will see that it begins to go down with my knees all the way at the forward part of the black pad. So this is another reason why I've added this extra padding up here, is it makes space for your feet or even your elbows. When you first start out on the board, you're gonna have your face almost directly over the nose, especially once you get some momentum going. And you can see that when I'm laying on the board, my arms are on this nice green pad. Again, I recommend adding more padding. So as soon as I start getting my head over the nose, you can see I'm on that fulcrum. And then when I'm on my knees are way up here close to the hatches. Watch out for the hatches. You don't want these hatches to dig into your knees. It's very painful. So you want to keep your knees further out with the green pads helping, or with your knees further in. And this just happens to be that fulcrum point where you can teeter on that angle. Because as you're gaining speed, you want to keep that nose down. You want to keep all the pressure of the water that's pushing up on the nose. You want to counteract that by having more pressure on the front than any other eFoil out there. Same thing for standing. You can see that when I'm standing, my foot is way up here on the hinge. That is the fulcrum point. And sometimes you might need to put it way up here on the green pad. So once again, this green pad is invaluable. Adding this extra padding is going to help a lot. So you have even more ability to push into that board. But once you're up and planing on the surface, you want to be more back on the balance of the wing. So that's kind of the trouble with this board, is as you're getting up on the surface of the water, you have to have your balance in a position that's going to keep the board down. And then once you're planing, then you have to move your position back so that you're balanced over the wing, because you're riding the wing. You're not riding the board. Once you're elevated, the board is just a platform for you to stand on. It's just a steering wheel. It's in the air. It's no longer in the water. So once you start to elevate, then your body has to be positioned more over the wing. And so once you get the board planing on the surface and it's running only on this back flat portion, then you might have to shift your feet back. You can do it by slowly, moving your foot like this. And eventually your front foot is going to be kind of right on top of the hinge or slightly behind the hinge. And your back foot is going to be more toe heavy, slightly, on just in front of the hinge. And you can see that there's just, if I put a lot of pressure and I'm doing a lunge, I have a position where I can still rock forward and put pressure onto the nose. So it is possible to get up while you're in a proper position over the wing. You can still push the nose down, but it's going to be harder to do. And so you can also use your front hand, or whichever hand does not have the controller. You might have to kind of lean like that. So you can push the nose down until it's planing, and then you can drive through that front leg, and then eventually shift your weight through your hips until the board is elevating. So I wanted to do this to show you that fulcrum on dry ground, and also so that we do not have the sound of the motor in the video, because the GetFOIL boards have a louder sound than other brands. I'm also going to show you out on the water, but hopefully you can take what I'm showing you in this room and combine it with what you're seeing me demonstrate on the water, and it will help you better understand how to get up with this unique angular cyberdeck shape. I hope you enjoy your eFoil, your foil, your GetFOIL eFoil. Check out my playlist of GetFOIL tips and care for other suggestions and tips and care to prolong the life of your foil. Here I'm showing the rocking difference between the FOIL Cyberdeck design or if I slowly let it down, versus this Waydo board that has a more rounded normal rocker. We'll demonstrate again with the shorter FOIL X or FOIL R, or the 4-foot 8-inch board. So again, you'll see that the fulcrum, it begins to tilt when I'm over the nose. This is true of any brand, but particularly with the FOIL X. That's going to help you get the board on plane and keep the nose only a couple of inches above the water, especially once you get some momentum. A shorter board, you're going to have to start further back to keep it from submerging and losing the Bluetooth connection. But once you get a little bit of momentum, then you want to quickly get over the nose and to keep the nose down. There you can see the fulcrum. And again on the knees, I've added that extra pad. Here's the original pad here. And once again, right where my knees are close together at the tip of the original pad, that is where we get our rocking motion. Or if you want to have your knees further out. You just want to watch out for the hard hinge and the hard board. It's not very, very comfortable. So you want to keep your knees in or out to avoid kneeling on the hinge. And then when you're standing up, again, we have a foot that's over the hinge line all the way up here. That's where the rocking motion occurs. That's where you can get the necessary pressure to keep that angled nose down. Okay, so I wanted to emphasize that the board isn't fully on plane and ready to elevate until the entire board is riding on the surface. There should not be water going over the top of the back of the board on the top of the deck. Water should be fully underneath the top of the deck, and that is the minimum speed to keep the board planing and the minimum speed to then gain flight and elevate above the water. I'm only going to demonstrate getting up on the shorter board because the shorter board is much more challenging, and everything that I do on the shorter board is going to be the same mostly on the bigger board, but easier because you have more surface area and a bigger platform, a bigger stage to maneuver your feet and your body weight. So when you first start on the board, you want to be as far forward as you can so that there's only a tiny bit or no water going across the top of the board. You can have a little bit of water, and it may even vary depending on your board and its construction. I think some are more sensitive than others, but you'll know what you can and cannot do as far as how much water can be on top of the board and maintain Bluetooth connectivity. So you're going to unlock the remote and you can start at a low power, or if you're pretty good at controlling your speed with the trigger, then you can use just the trigger at a higher power. It's all up to you. Some people do better by accelerating with the power levels or the gears, and some people do better by feathering the trigger. So this is where I'm at on the board. My elbows are just behind the hinge line. I'm gonna unlock the remote, add a little bit of momentum so you can stay above the waves. Okay, so you want to keep the nose just a little bit above the water or right at the water line so that you do not lose Bluetooth connectivity, but you're also not going to be fighting it going up in the air like this. You're never going to get up if the board is going up like this. It's not going to happen. So you need to keep the board level. If the board is level, the wing is also level. If the board is tilted, the wing is also tilted. You're getting a lot of upward lift and stalling and pressure. You're plowing the wing and you're plowing the board. So you got to keep it level so that you can just simply elevate. You don't need to take off like an airplane from ground to air. You're simply just changing elevation. Like an airplane changes elevation from air to air. The wing is changing elevation from water to water. The wing is always flying. The wing is always foiling. That's something to keep in mind. You're riding the wing, not the board. The board is just a helpful platform to get you started, and a steering wheel. I might be dumbing it down and not giving it enough credit than it is, but all right. So I'm power level 3. And I'm creeping my elbows up, and now my knees are right behind the hinges. My knees are right behind the hinges. We're gonna add more power. Pressing the button once. We're on power level 5, I think. More power. I got my knees all the way to the very point of the original pad. You want to find your minimum flying speed, the minimum speed to take off, and that's the speed that you're going to use for standing and anything else. So now you can see that the board is entirely on top of the water. We are planing on the surface. We have enough speed to take off. You just have to shift your weight a little bit back to angle the wing upward. Flying is a matter of having the right speed and the right angle on the wing. I'm going to back it down to 6, see if we can still fly. And we still elevate at power level 6. If you're struggling and it's really wobbly and the nose is going up really high, then you might want to use one more power level higher, even though you can fly at a lower speed. It's like a bike. You want to be able to have some stability with a little bit of speed. So right now I'm kind of wobbly, especially with all these waves. You want to go out when it's not so wavy. Definitely wanted smoother conditions than what I'm doing. All right, I'm going to use power level 7 because of the chop to get up, even though I could use 6. It's going to give me more stability, especially in my conditions. I'm 165 pounds. Climb onto the board until the nose is just barely above the water. Unlock the remote. And I'm gonna feather the trigger. We're gonna stand up. There's a couple of methods you can use to stand up. Because my hands are full, I like to use my weight on my forearms. You can see that I'm just shifting my knees up while keeping weight on my forearms to keep the nose down, but not submerging. Woo! There's a little bit of submerging. Got to get your knees all the way up near the hinges, if not past the hinges. Okay. And what I like to do is I like to look behind me and make sure my rear foot is roughly where I want it to be. We're not standing with the rear foot first. We're just going to put it where we can not have to move it so much later. It's really choppy, guys. A bigger board will be easier to get up when it's choppy. So I have my hand down, and then I look behind me and I see that the toes of my rear foot are in a good position. I use my front hand to maintain pressure on the nose. Then I get my front foot all the way up. Woo! And there's Bluetooth cut off. Woo! It's easier to do when your hands are not full and you're not distracted making a video. All right, start again. A lot of waves, a lot of distraction. All right, rear foot where I want it to be, hand down, foot down. You're gonna drive through your front leg. But you do not want to fly while standing. You want to get fully stood up before you start flying. If you're new, if you're an advanced rider, then doing what I just did is fine. All right, we'll try that again. You can see my feet position. Because of my slow speed and the big waves, I have it staggered for more stability. But once I get up to speed, I can move my front foot back, and it's much better. I like my foot just behind the hinge line. When the water is smoother, you can actually kind of get up while it's still mushy, but not too mushy. You want to make sure that the water is not going over the back of the board. Otherwise, it's going to sink you down. So you want to have a minimum speed where water is not going over the top of the board. So right there, the water is all completely below the deck line. Drive through that front leg. And then I have my foot way up here on the new pad. And then you can add a bit more speed. You can shimmy your foot like this to move it back, or you can push down and slide. You want to push down first because as you're sliding, you're taking weight off of that foot, which is allowing the nose to come up. And that's also something you need to do if you're going to do a body burial. You need to push down first. All right. I really hope this helps you guys out there. Anyone that has a short board, any board, especially the foil board. So let's demonstrate it a few more times here. So again, you have two methods. You can get it up to speed. You can get it up to your minimum takeoff speed, but that might be more intimidating and harder to keep the nose down. Or you can start at a little bit mushier speed, just below your minimum flying speed, and then bump it up once you have stood fully up and you have your wits and your balance about you. Let's use power level 5 or even 4. Let's see if we can do it with 4. That's going to be too much. We're going to have to do 5. On the longer board, I could probably do 4, but on this one, I'm going to have to do 5. So make sure your back foot's where you want it to be. Move your front foot up. You won't have to drive through that front leg as much because we're going slower. There's not as much volume and speed of water pushing the nose up. And then you can bump up the speed. Got some waves coming at us here. Every single time you hit the button to bump up the speed, you want to add weight to the front foot to counteract that movement, that speed, and the volume pushing up on the front of the board. All right, there we are. We'll do one last time, getting it up to speed first. Power level 7. All right. See how it's going nose high? You want to keep that down. I have my knee way up here to keep it down. There's also a lot of lift from the 250 wing. Woo! It's a big wing. Now that we're planing on the water, I don't have to have that knee up front anymore. It's a lot of pressure pushing on the bottom of the nose of the board because of the angle. Okay. Stand up and fly. See how quickly I did that? So now I have to shift my foot back so we have a more comfortable stance, so that if we go too high and breach, we're not going to do a nosedive. All right. Good luck, everyone. Live life to the fullest. I'm going to go sell my board. This is my last